What remains between us. Do you know what the cruelest part was? She asked. Gabriel looked at her across the darkened kitchen. What? Evelyn's voice remained calm then. Calm in the way oceans sometimes are before a hurricane reaches shore. It wasn't that you left me. He said nothing. It was that I built an entire life afterward. She continued. A marriage. A home. Decades of ordinary days. I buried parents. Raised a daughter. Sat beside hospital beds. Paid taxes. Hosted dinner parties. Smiled in photographs. I became someone people trusted. Someone sensible. The fire behind them shifted softly in the grate. And then one night, she said, you walk back into my house at 72 years old, and I realize with absolute horror that part of me has been standing in that train station waiting for you this entire time. Gabriel closed his eyes, but she was not finished. That is what unforgivable means. Chapter 1. By the time she said, you shouldn't have come, he was already inside the house, rain on his coat, the smell of wet cedar following him through the narrow hall. He looked older than she had prepared herself for. Not weaker. That would have been easier. Older in the way cliffs are older after winter, cut deeper, still standing. Somewhere upstairs, a clock struck midnight, though neither of them moved to acknowledge it. Evelyn closed the door carefully. The storm had worsened since dusk. Wind moved through the trees above the bluff with a sound like distant surf. The power had flickered twice already that evening, and the lamps in the living room glowed with an uncertain amber light that made the house seem older than it was. You drove in this? She asked. Gabriel removed his gloves slowly, as though his hands ached. I almost turned back. But you didn't. No. That single syllable settled between them heavily. She took his coat because she did not know what else to do. It was soaked through at the shoulders. Cold rainwater dampened her wrists. For a brief moment she was overtaken by a memory so physical it startled her. Another winter, another hallway, his mouth against the inside of her arm while guests laughed somewhere beyond a closed door. She hung the coat near the stove. You look tired, he said. The remark irritated her instantly. You came here at midnight during a coastal storm to tell me I look tired? A faint smile touched his face, though it carried no real amusement. I came because your daughter called me. At that, Evelyn went still. The kettle began to whistle softly in the kitchen. She turned away before he could see the change in her expression. Claire, of course. Her daughter possessed a talent for interference disguised as concern. At 32, she had perfected the art. She had no right, Evelyn said. She was worried. She exaggerates. She said you collapsed at the gallery. I fainted. That isn't better. Evelyn poured hot water into 2 cups, though she had not invited him to stay. Her hands remained steady. Years earlier, that would not have been true. You didn't need to come. Yes, Gabriel said quietly. I did. The kitchen fell silent except for rain striking the windows. She handed him a cup without looking directly at him. Their fingers touched briefly. The contact was so slight that another person might not have noticed it. But her entire body registered it instantly, like an old scar recognizing weather. He leaned against the counter. She remained standing near the sink. The distance between them was less than 6 feet. Felt enormous. You still live alone, he said. That sounds like criticism. It wasn't meant that way. You always say that after criticism. His eyes lowered into the steam rising from the cup. Some men became softer with age. Gabriel had not. Time had refined him instead, removed whatever excess charm youth had given him and left only the dangerous parts intact. Restraint, intelligence, patience. He no longer carried himself like a man expecting to be loved. There was something harsher in him now, a kind of discipline learned too late. She wondered suddenly if she looked equally altered to him. Not beautiful anymore, perhaps, but something else, necessary in a different way. You cut your hair, he said after a moment. It was practical. You used to hate practical things. I used to be 38. A small silence followed. He nodded once, accepting the wound she intended. Outside, Thunder rolled somewhere over the water. Evelyn moved into the living room carrying her tea. The fire had burned low. She knelt to place another log onto the embers, aware of him behind her, aware of his gaze resting. Not intrusively, not hungrily, simply there, upon the ordinary movement of her body. When she stood again, he had not looked away. That unsettled her more than if he had. "Claire shouldn't have called you," she said again. She didn't know who else to call. Evelyn laughed softly at that, though nothing about it was humorous. "That's absurd." "Is it?" "Yes." But even to herself the words sounded thin. Gabriel set his untouched tea aside. "When was the last time someone stayed here with you?" he asked. "You don't get to ask me that." "I just did." "You still mistake concern for entitlement. And you still mistake isolation for strength." The words landed harder than either of them expected. Evelyn turned toward the fireplace before answering. Flames moved quietly behind the iron grate. Beyond the windows stretched darkness, ocean, rain. "My husband has been dead for 9 years, she said. "I learned to live alone." Gabriel was silent. Then carefully, "That isn't the same thing." She closed her eyes briefly. There it was. The thing waiting beneath every conversation they had ever had. The sense that he could still see past the version of herself she presented to the world. Past composure. Past intellect. Past manners. She had loved him for that once. Then hated him for it. "You shouldn't stay long," she said. "I booked a room in town." "Good. But the bridge flooded 20 minutes ago." She turned. "How do you know?" "I passed the sheriff's truck on the way here. And they're closing the road until morning." The realization moved through her slowly. "You planned this." "No. But you're pleased by it." Something flickered across his face then. Not victory. Something sadder. "I'm not pleased to discover the only way you'll allow me near you is by force of weather." The fire cracked sharply. Evelyn looked down at her cup. Her pulse had become unsteady, though externally she remained calm. There had been a time when she could speak to this man for hours without effort. Long nights in borrowed apartments and empty university halls and hotel bars after conferences neither of them remembered afterward. Conversation had once unfolded between them with terrifying ease. Not because they agreed. They rarely had. But because each seemed to sharpen the other into fuller existence. Then came the affair. Then the ending. Then the years. "You disappeared," she said suddenly. Gabriel blinked as though the statement surprised him. "No," he said. "You left. I waited for you." "I know. Do you?" His jaw tightened. The rain intensified against the windows. Evelyn had not intended to say any of this tonight. In truth, she had spent years carefully constructing a life designed precisely to avoid moments like this one. Predictable dinners. Solitary mornings. Work that exhausted thought before memory could enter. And yet here he stood in her kitchen at midnight, carrying 40 years of unfinished feeling inside the lines of his face. "You married her very quickly," she said. For the first time since arriving, Gabriel looked genuinely tired. "Yes." "Why?" He considered the question seriously. "Because I thought it would save several people pain." "And did it?" "No." The honesty of the answer entered the room like another person. Evelyn looked away first. His marriage had lasted 23 years. 2 sons. A respectable life in Boston. Architecture awards. Interviews in magazines she pretended not to read. His wife had died 3 winters ago. Evelyn remembered the obituary because she had cut it from the newspaper without understanding why. She kept it for months in the drawer beside her bed before finally throwing it away unread. "You loved her?" she asked quietly. Gabriel did not answer immediately. "Yes," he said at last. "In a way." The restraint in those 3 words nearly undid her. "In a way," Evelyn repeated. "I loved her honestly. But not completely." His eyes met hers then. "No." Silence spread through the room. "Not awkward. Worse than awkward. Intimate." Evelyn rose abruptly and carried both cups back into the kitchen. She needed movement, distance, something ordinary to protect herself from the direction of the conversation. Behind her, Gabriel said softly. You once accused me of cowardice. You were cowardly. I know. She turned on the faucet harder than necessary. And cruel, she added. Yes. The easy agreement infuriated her. Stop doing that. What? Accepting blame like it absolves you. A long pause followed. Finally he said, Nothing absolves me. She gripped the edge of the sink. At her age, people stopped expecting emotional catastrophe. Passion belonged to the young, according to everyone. Older people were permitted affection, companionship, mild devotion. But not this. Not the terrible sudden reopening of old feeling. Not the humiliating awareness of one's own hunger. Especially not after decades. She dried her hands carefully. You should sleep, she said. And you? I won't. You never did sleep much during storms. The familiarity of the remark pierced her unexpectedly. She remembered another night long ago in Maine. A rented cottage. Rain hammering the roof. Him awake beside her at 3 in the morning reading Neruda aloud in terrible Spanish while she laughed into his shoulder to keep from crying. It astonished her suddenly that two people could survive so much separate life and still remain trapped inside the same memory. There's fresh linen upstairs, she said. Gabriel nodded. Neither moved. Then, quietly, Evelyn. She hated the tenderness in her own voice when she answered. What? If I had come after you back then? Would you have stayed? The question entered her body like cold water. For one suspended moment, the years between them vanished completely. She saw not the man before her now, but the younger version standing outside a train station in Philadelphia beneath November rain, watching her leave without attempting to stop her. He had looked stunned, not abandoned, stunned, as though he had believed until the final second that she would turn back. Evelyn folded the dish towel once, twice. No, she lied. Gabriel studied her face. He did not challenge the answer. That hurt more than if he had. The lights flickered again, then failed completely. Darkness swallowed the room. A sharp wind moved against the house, followed by the distant crash of something large falling outside. Evelyn inhaled sharply. Gabriel was beside her immediately. Not touching, simply close enough that she could feel the warmth of him in the dark. Easy, he said. The words were low, instinctive. For a moment neither of them spoke. The house creaked softly around them. Rain, wind, breathing. Then his hand found hers. Not accidentally, not uncertainly. Just the weight of his fingers closing around her hand in darkness after 40 years of wanting and refusing. And Evelyn did not let go.